how to put together a presentation. So you guys should have all gotten a handout like this, trifold brochure. So this has all the details in it. So how many of you are doctoral students? And then are the rest of you masters? Are you thesis option students? Okay, so that's easy. So this year was a little bit different from last year, is we're going to have 2 separate competitions. They'll be happening at the same time, but they'll be judged in separate categories, one for the doctoral and one for the master's students. So it will actually be the doctoral winner that will advance to the regional competition, but we do have prizes for both the doctoral winner and the master's winner. So first place for doctoral is $1,000, and first place for master's winner is $750, and then from there you can see there's a runner-up, and then also there will be a People's Choice Award. So when you give your 3-minute thesis presentation, there'll be a panel of judges, and they will determine the winner and runner-up. But there's also going to be a group in the audience, and they get to vote as well on which presentation they thought was the best. So that will be the People's Choice Award, will be determined by the audience. And so that just adds a little bit more engagement with the audience, and a little bit more fun because last year we had a lot of people from the community. There's a lot of students and faculty that came, but then also people from the community that came. So it just gives you another element of who you're presenting to when you think about putting together your presentation. So in order to be eligible to compete, if you are a master's student, you need to be at least in your 2nd year. So have all of you started your 2nd year? Okay. And then for doctoral students, you need to at least have started your 3rd year. And the reasoning behind that is we want you to have started some research and actually have something that you can report on. You know, for students that have first started out that haven't really been engaged in much research yet, it's going to be a lot harder for them to compete in this competition. So that's the eligibility. And let's see. So the way the competition is going to work, we're going to start out with having a preliminary competition, and that's what you have to register for by October 24th. We have a link on our website. Then the first week of November, November 1st through 3rd, we'll have the preliminary competition. And that's going to be, you'll just be in front of a panel of 3 or 4 judges. You'll be in a small room. You'll have your slide behind you, and you're just going to be presenting to those judges. After you give your presentation, they'll actually go one by one and give you some feedback. So it's a really good time to develop yourself. Even if you don't advance, it's a really great experience.
So this
yes.
is the preliminary competition. It is a elimination now?
Yes. So from the preliminary competition, we'll choose roughly the top 5 students to advance to the final competition. So last year we had 6 because the scores were so close that we decided to take 6 students to advance to the final round. So then for the final round, it will be actually in front, it's open to the public. So you'll have a panel of judges, but then also people. We had about 100 people in attendance last year for the final competition. And you're in a much larger room, you're up on stage, and so that's kind of the setup of how it works. But also what we did for the preliminary participants who did not advance to the final competition, we had a poster session before the final competition started. So they had their one slide and stood by their poster and were able to still talk with the audience before the competition started. So again, there's lots of great experiences even if you don't advance to the very final competition. So do you guys have any questions about how that will work?
When you say that you should have some results with you, what kind of results you're expecting for the thesis? Should it be a very basic results or?
Yes, so because you only have 3 minutes, so you don't have to really go in depth. We'll watch a sample, and we also have the finalists are on our website. If you want to watch them, it's just ogaps.tamu.edu/3mt, and we have videos of all our finalists. But really, they would just give a real quick. So the results of this work was we found that 2 or 3 sentences just explaining what they found, or I think I saw a few where they were initially we found this because they're not necessarily at the final stage. Do y'all have any other questions? So So those are the main highlight points. Also, when you register for the preliminary competition, the deadline is October 24th, and then I think there's another deadline, which I don't, it's not on here. So I think it's October 30th is the deadline to submit your one slide. So that's something to keep in mind. Don't let that catch you by surprise that you actually have to submit your slide. I think it's the Wednesday or Thursday before the preliminary competition, and that's just so we can check all the slides beforehand and make sure that they're following the guidelines. So, and we'll get into some more details about what is included in those slides as we continue. Okay, yes?
When you judge a particular thesis, in those 3 minutes, what is it that you're looking at? Is it how applicable that particular experiment is or thesis is to the real world, or what kind of things you're looking at?
That's a really good question. So what the question was, what are we looking for in judging the 3-minute thesis competition? So do we have the judging guidelines? So, okay, they're not on this handout, but if you go to the website that I mentioned earlier, we do have the judging guidelines listed there. But I know it's comprehension, engagement, and one other category. But basically, a good presentation, you'll explain the impact of your research and kind of the purpose. Why do people care? Connecting it to the audience, to the judges, and just it's more the big picture and not too narrowed down into the details. And we have a couple slides. We'll talk about that too. Yes.
So if you've done contextual research and have started building your testing device or whatever, you don't have qualitative or quantitative results from that sort of thing, which is basically the main point of what your hypothesis is for your thesis, then you can't do this competition. Is that what I'm understanding? It's because you don't then really have results from what your hypothesis is.
Mm-hmm. I think, so this is all new, because this is still our second year. So a lot of last year, what we were doing was just kind of case-by-case basis. But I think what you could say is this is what we're doing, and this is what it will measure, and hopefully we will find out this. Is that, what do you think?
Yeah, I think. Hi, I'm Sue Bloomfield. I also work with Joelle at Graduate and Professional Studies and helped with this competition last year. If you're working on a product development or improving a product, I think then you would focus on what's the product's utility? Why would somebody on the street care about this product or what it can do? Or is it important to the science in your field? You might give some examples of how you test it, or this is the kind of thing we want it to do, so we test it this way. I mean, I think you could show some of the process, but it'll help us a lot. We may just have to have you apply and see your slide, and what else do they include in the application? Any other details about?
Yeah, just the registration is pretty basic, so you don't give much details about what your presentation is.
Why don't you talk individually with Joelle or I after the session? We can maybe help fine-tune that decision.
Okay, and this is a good segue into our next presenter. We have Dr. Kenneth Schafer here from the Writing Center. So if you are interested in this competition, there's going to be opportunities for you to get help on putting together your 3-minute thesis presentation from the Writing Center. And so they will offer consultations, and Dr. Schafer is going to talk to you a little bit about how they'll be able to help you. So definitely you don't have to have your entire presentation together by the time you register on October 24th, but I think you definitely want to start on it before then and have a good idea of what you're going to present, because as I said, your slide will be due before the preliminary competition, and then November 1st is our first day of the prelims. So.
Is it November 3rd or?
It's November 1st through 3rd. So we have 3 days reserved. It just depends on how many students we have that sign up after all.
It says November 3rd to 5th.
You know what, you're right. So you're right, I'm sorry. It is November 3rd. It's that Monday, the first Monday in November. So Monday through Wednesdays. So we, like last year, we ended up only having 2 days of competition because we didn't have too many students sign up. So we could assign you any one of those days. We'll get your preference of when you're available, and we'll try to stick to that as much as possible. So, sorry, November 3rd is when you'll have to be ready to compete.
Howdy. My name is Kenneth Schafer. I'm the Associate Director of the University Writing Center, and I just want to show you a few things about the way we can help you prepare your presentation. So let me just show you our website real quickly. One of the things that you can do, there are a couple of ways that you can get help with your 3-minute thesis preparation. And of course, you're going to be going through several stages. You're going to be brainstorming about what to say, what am I going to include. There's going to be a part where you're going to be probably writing out, a script or notes about what you want to say. There's also the slide design, what you want to put on your slide. And also there's a part of practicing the presentation, because you certainly don't want to go before the team of judges without kind of making sure that you have this down. So we can help with all of those things at the University Writing Center. It doesn't matter what stage you are in the process. You can come multiple times, you can just come once. I guess I wasn't really, the deadline is coming up pretty quickly. So if you do decide that you probably will want help from the Writing Center, I would make an appointment actually today or tomorrow, even if you haven't written the word yet. Because we get very, very busy, very full. So let me show you, this is our website, writingcenter.tamu.edu, and you actually don't even have to remember that. If you go to the TAMU website and you put in the search bar, Writing Center, it'll go right to our website, no problem, because you don't have to remember anything. But what you can do is you can make an in-person appointment. You can also send your work in online if you'd rather do that. You don't want to practice your presentation online necessarily, although we do have web conferencing to do that if you really want to stretch, have a stretch there. But if you want to come in face-to-face and brainstorm with a consultant, one of the things that I'm going to do after this presentation is send all of the materials here to my consultants who work at the Writing Center and say, hey, you may be seeing some 3-minute thesis presentation sessions next week. Here's how to prepare for those, so they'll be ready for you. So you can come in and brainstorm. Hey, I want to bounce some ideas off of you. You can bring in a draft. You can send in a draft online. Or if you're down to like the final, the November 3rd or November 2nd, you say, I really want to practice my presentation. The only thing we'll do is we'll ask you to actually indicate that in the entry survey. So let me just show you just very quickly. All you have to do is go to make an appointment. Okay? And when you make an appointment, you make in-person appointment, online, or web conferencing. So let's just say you're going to come in person. All you have to do is log in with your NetID and password, and then you'll just choose an appointment time. And then in the entry survey, you just put in, I'm working on my 3-minute thesis. We don't have to go through all of that, because I have 3 minutes to deliver the 3-minute information on the 3-minute thesis to you. So I'm trying to be very, very, very concise and clear on this. You can also send in your papers, so if you want an online appointment, the differences between the online appointments and face-to-face is you'll just submit the paper online. That's not a problem. The only thing it's going to do, it's going to take the next available appointment, okay? So the next available appointment is going to say, hey, is October the 31st, is that okay with you? Oh, that's way too late, okay? Now, that brings a third option. We have a location, our main location is in Evans Library, 2nd floor. Okay, that's where kind of the bulk of our face-to-face appointments take place. It's where we're open during the day. But I know most of you guys are engineers here over here, but we're open at West Campus from 5:30. West Campus Library, 2nd floor of West Campus Library. We're open from 5:30 to 10, Sunday night through Thursday night. So if you want, and that's a drop-in center only. So if you say, oh, I think I just want to run over there, then you can see consultant, without an appointment. Okay, so if you want to make an appointment for Evans, that's great. If you say, no, I just want to drop in and talk to somebody about my research and just practice and throw some ideas around, just run on over to West Campus in the evenings. Okay, So lots of ways to see us. We're here to help you. Like I said, I'm going to prep my folks on how to work with the things. And you just say, in the entry survey, say, I'm working on my 3-minute thesis. I want to practice my presentation. If you do that, we'll try to get a room with a projector. We can't always do that, so that you can actually do that. If not, we can get a group study room of some kind so that we can kind of sit in and watch you and kind of simulate what you're going to be going through. Okay? Well, listen, we're here to help you. Use the Writing Center for anything. We're here to help you with your coursework too. Now, by the way, you can come in for all kinds of writing, personal statements, anything you want. But for this, please use our services. We're happy to help you, and we wish you the best of luck. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Okay, so we've been talking kind of about how to prepare and be part of the competition. So we're going to switch gears and talk a little bit more about what is a 3-minute thesis presentation and how do you create your own. So does anybody have any questions before we move on? Also, one thing I don't think I mentioned earlier, so with the 3 minutes, the way the timing works is as soon as you get up there and as soon as you start talking, that's when the timer starts. So from the point you start talking, you have 3 minutes, and a bell will ding at the end to let you know you're done. And if you haven't finished, you have to stop talking at that point. Otherwise, you'll be disqualified if you continue over the 3 minutes. But it seemed like for the most part, the average was maybe like 2.5 minutes that people would present most of the time because I think they were nervous about going over, so they made it a little bit shorter. But anyway, so that's just a little bit of how it worked.
I think they get a warning bell.
Well, there's not a warning bell, but we do hold up signs. So there's a timer, and they'll be in the back, and they'll let you know. I think when you have 1 minute left, then when you have 30 seconds left, and then I think there's like a 10 or 5 second warning. So, but then at 3 minutes is when the bell actually goes off. So we're gonna watch Kelly Lemons. Do any of you know Kelly?
He actually attended the dissertation workshops that we offer too. So it's all got to come together, right?
Yeah. And he attended this session last year too. So he is the winner of last year's competition. So I thought we could watch his video. I don't know if you'll be able to see his slide in the background, but this will just give you an idea. Have any of you watched any of the 3-minute thesis videos already? Okay, so.
It's a really good idea.
So this will give you an idea.
Place yourself in Brazil. Perhaps you're there at a conference. You take some time away from your conference to walk the streets towards Copacabana Beach. You find yourself immersed in a new and exciting cultural environment. You think to yourself, I wish I had time to understand this, to experience this. You think to yourself, I wish I had done a study abroad. These are the assumptions that we place upon a study abroad. The students will return from their experience gaining cultural competence. That is to say that they will return being able to interact with and understand people better from foreign cultures. Now, I tested these assumptions on 3 study abroad programs by participating in them, and I measured cultural competence by giving students the intercultural development inventory directly before and directly after their trip. In my results, I found that students were actually relatively unaffected by their experience in terms of cultural competence. And in fact, the students actually returned sometimes even less culturally competent than they were when they left on their trip. Now, I observed that this is due to one primary factor, and that is that culture travels the path of least resistance. That is to say that students are more likely to interact with people of their own culture than they are to interact with people of foreign cultures. I observed that students didn't know how to break away from their American groups. They didn't know how to interact, and they didn't know how to reflect upon the cultural environment in front of them. Therefore, I suggest that interventions in learning must be had on a study abroad program. Students must be taught and encouraged to break out of their cultural norm groups. They must be taught how to interact, and they must be taught primarily how to reflect. And they can do this by learning certain journaling techniques and by reflecting upon their experience, reflecting on the cultural environment before them, they will increase in intercultural competence. Now, place yourself back in Brazil. You turn to head back to your conference. and you overhear an American Study Abroad student taking in the same exciting environmental scene before you, and you hear them say, "Man, I wish I could understand this," and you see 9 other American Study Abroad students with them nodding their head. It is this phenomenon that we need to mitigate by implementing interventions in learning and making study abroad a more impactful and important experience. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, okay, there we go. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea of what a 3-minute thesis presentation looks like. I wish that I didn't think to have a picture of this slide, but you can kind of get an idea. We have more videos online, and also on the official 3-minute thesis website. It's 3minutethesis.org, I believe. They have tons of videos available. Also, if you just get on YouTube and you search for 3-minute thesis, there's other universities across the U.S. that have implemented this competition, and so there's lots of videos available for you to watch and get an idea of what it's like. So kind of what I wanted to touch on real quick. In a couple minutes, we're going to break up into groups and go a little bit more in depth about how you can start putting together your presentation. But real quick, I wanted to start with talking about the difference of how is this different than just a regular academic presentation. Have any of you gone to a conference and given a presentation before? Any? Okay, a couple of people nodding their head. So what makes this difference? Well, one thing is obviously the time. You have 3 minutes, so one of the priorities is you have to be concise. And that's the challenge of this competition. That's kind of why it originated, is because it originated more in the STEM and sciences discipline, and it was a challenge for people to be able to communicate their research clearly and concisely. Kind of like an elevator speech for scientists is how it started. And now, since it has brought into a variety of different disciplines, and here it's open to anyone at A&M, any discipline, but still the idea is to communicate the most important points concisely and not get too stuck in the details. And so that's definitely a difference from a traditional academic presentation. And then also a big priority is communicating to a lay audience. And so another reason why this competition originated is they really wanted science to be more accessible to all people, and so they really emphasize you're not talking to someone within your discipline, you're talking to just a normal, everyday, non-academic person. And so that's another thing that the judges will really be looking at, is how well are you able to communicate to a lay audience. And so, real quick, I know we said this is a little bit different than an academic presentation, but I'm sure all of you have seen or are more familiar with academic presentations. So right off the bat, what are some things that you have noticed that make for a bad presentation? Yes.
Reading off the slide, just standing there and just reading off the slide.
So reading off the slide, what else?
Halting in the middle. When you halt, there's a long pause sometimes in the middle.
Long pause. Okay, what else?
No eye contact.
No eye contact. That's good.
Using too much of the scientific jargon.
Too much scientific jargon. Yes. What else? Anything? So it really bothers me when people move a lot, and I think I actually do that when I talk, but too much movement can be distracting from what they're trying to say. So those are all really great things. So even though this is a little bit different from an academic presentation, those are things you can keep in mind. For one, you can't use notes of any kind, so you're going to have to memorize your presentation, and you also only have one slide, so it won't really help you to read off the slide. Your presentation would be pretty short that way. Also, having eye contact, engaging with the audience and the judges, that'll be a really important aspect. So some of these things that are just general good public speaking practices are still important. But then there's these other areas to really focus on, communicating to a lay audience and being concise. And I think, too, really communicating the impact and connecting your research to the audience is what will make a big difference. What I think was really important that Kelly Lemons did, I don't know, the volume was kind of slow to ramp up at the very beginning, but he started off his presentation by saying, imagine that you are at a conference. So he was connecting it to the faculty that were judging him, and, so they could kind of think, yeah, okay, I can imagine myself in that situation. So I think really putting it in a context that people can understand is important. So what we're going to transition to next is we are going to split into two groups. So we have some faculty here to help us just talk a little bit more about where do you start and what are the most important elements to include in your presentation if you only have 3 minutes. So I know we had some new people. Are any of you from a non-STEM discipline? We've got, looks like all STEM. Okay.
We've got one from health and kinesiology.
We got one from health and kinesiology. Okay. So,
Much yours, right?
One-on-one.
It's my
yeah.
yours.
Okay. So we were going to split into STEM and then humanities and social science, but it looks like we're all pretty much STEM. So should we just stay in one group?
Well, we can. So want to try that? And I'm a life scientist. I'm a physiologist, so I follow the STEM area. And I work with engineers, so I have some feel for how engineers go about presenting. But what we really want to share with you now, how about if I start and then I give it to you for some examples? Okay, so Sue Bloomfield, I'm a professor in the same department. We are very well represented, but I'm a physiologist, so I come from STEM disciplines. And my job here is to kind of give you some tips in getting prepared. Some of you may have already, how many of you have presented papers at meetings before? Anyone? A few of you. Okay, so many of you have not yet done this. This is clearly not the same style and format as you will present at a meeting. Some generalities would apply to both, but I'm going to focus on this unique format and how you might start going about preparing. And then it will be very helpful. Dr. Leishi Chen, it comes from a more, say, social science type discipline. We also wanted to make this competition open to people in humanities, history, English, and so forth. So we're trying to pull faculty from those different disciplines, because I have no idea how a historian or an English doctoral student might present information. So you'll first, of course, want to start thinking about what are the key points I want to make. I would suggest just making a bullet list of maybe 6 key points about purpose, about impact, the most important method you used, and maybe 1 or 2 key results. Right? And then it is always helpful to come back at the end to why is this important? What is the impact? What are some implications of the findings? So a conclusion that brings it back. Often it's very helpful if you come back to where you started, right, to remind them. But as you could see from Kelly's presentation, he was trying to make it relevant to the everyday person. And in fact, this applies, and this is actually a very, very important skill if you ever are in the position of writing a grant proposal, you're asking someone for money, you have to convince them that this is important. Why should this work be funded? What's the significance? But in this case, you have to be able to explain it in terms that, say, Uncle Harry or Aunt Millie would understand, right? Not to someone in your discipline, but to someone you just meet out on the street who knows nothing about your discipline, right? There was one aerospace engineer, for example, who competed last year, who was studying wing design, right? And how to, the aeroelastic behavior of the wing and how to mitigate turbulence in commercial airplanes. And he explained, he gave a very easy example. Like, imagine you're flying on an airplane and you're having your coffee and all of a sudden turbulence hits and you really hope your coffee's not going to spill all over your lap. He gave a good example of what does turbulence mean, right? Because you cannot assume, imagine you're speaking to high school students, okay? Or someone who knows nothing about your discipline. So you have to avoid all jargon, all technical terms, or if you use a technical term, explain it. But I would suggest keeping to very standard language. And this applies then to your slide as well. Right? You only get one slide, no moving parts, And imagine you don't have time or place to have a lot of detailed text. I don't think what you want is a visual, something that grabs the audience interest, that relates to your research, okay? I remember the aerospace engineer, he had something about, an image of an airplane or a wing or maybe some turbulent airflow under the wing, but some visual like that. It's really just to capture audience interest. It was very interesting to see how different students constructed this. But yeah, there's no animation. You can't add any rich, results. If you put any data on there, I make it very, very simple. Like a very simple bar graph that might show the contrast among three groups or something. I mean, it has to be very simple. You only have 3 minutes. So then as you get farther along and before you would compete in the preliminaries, of course, you're going to have to spend some time practicing so that you can speak this from memory, right? And this is a very tough task because very rarely do we have to do this at a scientific meeting, right? You have your slides, you might have notes. I'm often at meetings where it looks, somebody's reading their presentation. You can't do that here. So this does take some investment of your time to basically memorize your 3-minute talk. And again, if you organize it in bullets, if I have to do a task like this, I like to highlight keywords or the start of each sentence and try to get that in my head so that I can get my flow. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Chen so she can add some comments from the social science perspective and how it might be different.
All right. Can I ask you a question real quick, though? I know it's in the exam, I'm so sorry, but I don't want to prep our people to help. I noticed that Kelly didn't refer to the slide at all.
He did not.
Was that something that goes for you against? How does that work in terms of, he didn't refer to the
Right.
slide? How does that?
That's a good question. The question is, for anybody listening in, the presenter, we saw an example, the Kelly Lemon's presentation, he did not refer to his slide. And I don't think there's anything in the rules about this. Is there, Joelle?
Yeah, so it was something that we were not sure of last year, and so the majority of the students didn't really refer to their slides, so we kind of just decided we will not penalize students for that, just because it was very unclear. We didn't state anything ahead of time that you had to or didn't have to. So I think, and one thing about Kelly's slide, I remember now, his slide was just a picture of a beach and people along the beach. So it really was just a visual. There wasn't really anything for him.
He could have gestured to it.
It's true. He could have gestured to it, but it wasn't like there was anything that really needed explaining on the slide. And I think the best presentations were set up like that, where you didn't necessarily have to point to something on the slide and explain it in order to make your point. It was just there as a supplement.
Sorry.
No, that's a good question.
Yeah, so personally, my preference would be if there's anything that's not real obvious on your slide, that at some point you say, and as you can see from the simple bar graph, group B performed much better in this outcome, or product C or method C, gave me a much better outcome because you can see the output is so much higher than all the others. But that's about as far as you can go in as much time as you have. Okay, so let's give it to Dr.
Thanks, Dr. Broadfield. Let me sit here. I'm pregnant. I cannot stand too long. Sorry, guys. I'm Lacey Chen, health and kinesiology. So my field is social behavior science, but my husband is a faculty in chemical engineering. So he kind of know what's the natural science people are doing. It's very interesting. I've seen many people are international students, right? Raise your hands if you are international students. Okay, so I can kind of give you guys just steal a little bit from Dr. Broadfield's perspective, just give you guys some idea about how to give a good presentation for international students and compare the cultural differences between international students and domestic students. It's challenging for international students to give presentations. Let's put it this way. Regardless which field you are. So I have seen some faculties and some groups, what they try to do is they will not allow international students to give a oral conference presentations. They basically say you can only give a poster presentation, not oral presentations. But you don't want to go this route because in the long run, this is bad for your career because you want to show you will be able to speak in English and you will be a good presenter. So, and I've seen like then some faculty, they say, okay, if you international students wants to give a talk, that's fine. But you have to write down everything you want to say as a script. And then you go to a presentation, you read it. And that is horribly boring in the presentation. So, and you don't want to go these routes. So, in the long run, you have to train yourself in terms of presentation skills and English. I often say like there's a lot of international students, including my students. They are super smart. They work very hard. But when they give a presentation, people just don't really like it. So I've watched there's a couple issues. The first is professional dress. I don't know why, like sometimes international students, they give conference and presentation, they go to conference, they just don't dress professionally. So they can dress very casually, and they probably don't know American culture, what is called professional dress. But if you see the videos, it's very good, a nice shoes and has a tie. And so that's something you have to be careful, like which thing you have to do. And if you are female students, I hate to say that because I hate there is some gender bias. But sometimes there is some expectation if you go to conference, if you give a formal presentation on your jobs, you need to wear makeup and has earring. That's kind of, there's some assumptions. So, so you have to make sure like you take care of your hair, your makeup, your earrings, and dress very well. So the professional dress is number one. Don't assume like, oh, you have the best content in the world, you'll be good. Because people do look at you, how you look like. And the second thing is, somehow like many international students, when they give talk, people just don't feel like they have confidence. Maybe that is because the way they talk is too monotonous, or is too small voice, or there's no gestures. So, but you have to show you have confidence. And this is important. You have to believe yourself what you are doing is the best things in the world. Your research is the best in the world, regardless it's true or not. You have to convince yourself what you are doing is the most important things in the world. If you don't believe yourself, other people won't believe you. So there's something you might have to build up your confidence. And then third thing is some international students English. They probably need to improve their English. So that's okay, people have accents. I have accents, a lot of faculty have accents. But then you can try to improve your English by like, you can speak in a more slowly or a very efficient way to say things. And you don't want people to feel like you never practice your English. So usually I will encourage my students, our international students, before their presentation, they have somebody, native speakers, to check like their pronunciation, what they say are correct. So because this is important. And I know like sometimes like training like international students but a lot of time you stay in lab or doing your work, stats work. You have less experience in giving a presentation or talking public. And so then when you have to give a presentation, then you'll become like nervous. And that's applied to everybody. But what you need to overcome the barriers is to practice, practice and practice. Because and if you prepare and practice, then you'll be less nervous. And I've watched like when people are nervous, I have the same issues. I tend to speak very fast. And then when you're English, you already have accent, and you speak very fast. People don't know what you try to say. Okay, so I think these some tips I will give to international students, and hope this is helpful. Thanks.
Did you Yeah. Well, I'm just going to follow up. That was really great. I will say that the University Writing Center also has, if you're an international student, we have international student workshops every Monday night Like this Monday, we're doing a presentation with Career Services, but we do a lot of interactive and conversation pieces. Also, we have a program called Place at the Writing Center. If you want to just practice your conversation skills, just sign up for the Place program from our website, and you'll get 5 consultations with the same consultant. So you don't have to explain yourself, and then you say, what do I want to work on? We have a student, an architecture grad student, who comes in every Thursday and Friday at 9. She's been coming here for about, I guess, at least 2 or 3 times a week. She came every day in the summer for 7 months, and I cannot tell you, I couldn't understand what she was saying when she first came. I had to really, really say, slow down. Now her English is fantastic, and she's very confident. So just some of the things that are extra, not just for this competition, we can help you with that as well. So that's the only thing I have.
So I think it's important to turn this over to you now and see what questions you have, because some things may still be unclear, or questions about strategy or how best to go about preparing for the preliminary competition. We've been that clear. We've answered every possible question. I think one challenge is, you realize you have to have your slide pulled together before the competition. So let me focus one more time on that just a bit. Think about, this might have to relate to the significance or impact of your research. I mean, you might have images about a certain product or a certain mechanism. In fact, well, let's try this. Can I ask you, sir, what's your research focusing on?
With value proposition, selling the customers, supplier to the customer. When you sell the customer, how do you communicate? How do you?
Okay, so you're in industrial distribution, and your research is dealing with how to communicate best with the customer. Okay, so you might think of some visuals, right? Can you think of a visual you might use to illustrate that?
I mean, one of the aspects is multiple messages. Companies have only one message, but there are 10 people selling the product, so 10 people send a different message. So we use that as a different colors coming out of one.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, if you think of a visual to illustrate that key concept, and say, it might illustrate the problem. Here's the problem. Customers are getting 10 different messages that are different kinds of information. We're trying to hone this down to one consistent piece of information. So there's any number of ways to illustrate this, but I hope I'm convincing you to step away from the usual academic presentation, right, where you have purpose and objectives or hypotheses and then methods and results with graphics or tables or figures. No, that's not this competition. It's something that you think would grab the public's interest, right? The people outside your field. You're not talking to your fellow engineers, scientists, or genomics experts. You're talking to people outside your field. Because the judges, of course, come from all disciplines across the campus. And they know that the whole point of this is to translate the significance and impact and summarize some chief results. I think it will help a lot, too, if you go online and watch some videos of previous winners. I found one today at University of Queensland. This competition actually started in Australia at the University of Queensland. And their 2013 winner had a project. She was actually from some department in the College of Education. She did a research project on Facebook postings of adolescent girls. And, so Facebook, of course, is something everybody can relate to. So she had an image of a Facebook page with a picture and a few other images. So, that was easy, of course, to connect with a general audience. It's much more challenging if you're researching, can you imagine, somebody in philosophy who's studying, details about some 17th century philosopher. That would be much more difficult, right, to come up with a visual. And you're in key, very technical engineering disciplines, it might be harder to think of a good visual, but we'll just have to think about what's the impact of this on the everyday person, and what kind of visual would make sense to them to link to my research. Question?
Yeah, so I am dealing with planktonic foraminifera and so microorganisms out in the ocean and how I can use them, and in the fossil record, their reference in the fossil record to reconstruct how the environments were in geologic past. So I'm just hearing at how to scale down the entire 3-minute talk that I might give.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking I might have a hard time,
Oh, but I can think of some great, some images of the plankton blown up, or something that illustrate geologic time. I don't know, rock layers or something. And here my plankton are in this layer down here, and this relates to this era, so many hundreds of thousands or millions of years ago. So yeah, some visual that gives people a sense of this is the kind of organism I'm looking at, and here's the sense of the time scale I'm investigating. So yeah, something, do avoid anything that's hard to read from the back of the room. You want it to be easily visible to everyone there.
Yeah, and we actually have a couple exercises. We're running low on time, but we do have a couple exercises to help you start thinking in that terms of how to scale down your research if you want to go back to the PowerPoint. So if you want to switch it back to the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so one thing we're going to do, we can see how far we get in the next 10 minutes, but to help you think about being concise, if you have a piece of paper or something, your phone, something that you can write on, if you can finish this sentence, the purpose of my research is, in like 1 or 2 sentences. Just think about it for a minute, write it out, and then we're going to share it with each other and get some feedback. So the idea is you're starting with talking about the purpose, because that hopefully will help you start thinking about the big picture rather than starting with your methods or what you're doing. You're starting from, what is the purpose? Why are you doing this? So see if you can answer that in 1 or 2 sentences.
In lay language.
Yes. And then what we'll do now, if you want to get with a partner, read your statement to them and then get some feedback. This is a really great time to mix with someone who's maybe not from your department, so you can see how understandable is what you just said to someone who is not in your field. So,
Can the 3 of you who came in later tell us what departments you're from?
I'm from the Department of Geology and Geophysics.
Okay. And you two, what
I'm
departments?
from the Department of Chemical Engineering.
Toxicology.
Okay. So you two would qualify as 2 different, but see if you can find somebody who's not in your immediate discipline.
and so we just have like about 5 minutes left, so we'll just spend the rest of the time just giving each other some feedback, and also think about, is what you're communicating, does it make sense, or does it need a lot of further explanation in order for someone to understand what you're saying? So another thing you can kind of give each other feedback on. All right. So, find a partner.